Welcome to the Fearless Podcast, where we empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life. I'm one of your hosts, LaDrina Wilson, joined by Fearless editor Macey Shofroth, and our special guest for today. Super excited to see you, Macey, and really anxious to jump into today's conversation. A few months ago, we teased in our newsletter that we would have some new content coming, and we wanted audience members to give us some input on topics that they wanted to dig into. Someone wrote in about having a different identity from others that were seated at the table, and I can't wait to share kind of that question, their story, as it leads into our speakers for today and our guests for today. They wrote, "I'd like advice for women to gain respect and authority when comments are made that they are the only woman in the room full of males, that they are young. This particular individual is 15 to 20 years younger than anyone that was in the room, or that the person they are speaking to is making comments about, you're probably older, like I'm probably older than your dad." So this individual that wrote in said this comes up with them all the time. They could give dozens of examples of these various comments that are made. She's 30 with a decade of experience in her industry. She writes, "I've thought about these snide remarks afterwards and asked others for advice, but still feel a bit fearful with my appearance as a youthful woman and feeling as though I have to earn respect while my younger male colleagues are given respect internally as well as by clients." So today we're going to dig into what I like to refer to as being one of the lonely only or one of the few. So as we dig into today's issue, we are going to invite our special guest, Saloni Patel. Welcome, Saloni.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's my honor and my pleasure. Saloni is a 30-year-old senior architect who is ascending her career in leadership while navigating being one of the lonely only. She's often the youngest in the room, one of the few females in the room, and her ethnic background isn't always reflected in the workspaces that she occupies. You know, Saloni, when I was thinking about who we would talk to about this, you were one of the first people that came to mind. Quite frankly, I actually don't know that I know any other female architects, like personally. So I've always been really impressed with how you show up, and I couldn't think of a better person to join us for today's conversation. So let's jump right in. When I think about what it might be like to be a female and to be an architect, it's really hard for me to put myself in your shoes because first of all, my mind doesn't work like that. So I just already have so much regard and respect for the brilliance that you bring. But can you talk to us a little bit about how you chose the field that you're in, and if you considered what the work environment might be like before you chose this career?
Yeah, so in terms of why I chose architecture, I was really looking for something that was like a balance between the creative side of things. You get to design these beautiful spaces, and it's something technical as well. We can design it, but how does it get built? How do these different components come together? And how does this thing stand up when we're done with it? So I really enjoyed that balance, but the work environment was not at all something that I had thought about when I had started in this career. I have very supportive parents who've always just, let me kind of go into whatever field I was passionate about. And so when I told them I wanted to be an architect, there was no hesitation, no pushback. And I think looking back, if they hadn't encouraged me in that direction, it would have been really hard for me to think that architecture as a woman, as a minority, as like I'm still relatively young in my career, to be able to keep moving forward in that kind of progression, just without being able to see other people who looked like me in that field. Now, one of the things that keeps me in it is being able to, you walk into a space and have this feeling of, I've designed this, and like I've been able to see how the whole process has been from beginning to end with, you work on these projects for years. You're working with stakeholders and community members and board of directors for nonprofits and like their clients that they serve, and seeing all of these different people who are involved in the project from the beginning, and then to have them actually be using the space how it's intended, and it really serves them, that's kind of what keeps me in it.
So it sounds like you get the satisfaction, you have the patience clearly, because if it's taking years to get to the finish line on some of these projects, the satisfaction comes from being able to actually see people experience the fruit of your labor and kind of having the space utilized in the way that you had imagined, both creatively but also technically.
Yeah, it's really rewarding to, like we have these conversations at the very beginning of projects where, for example, there was a community center that I was working on a couple of years ago. And at the very beginning of the process, we had a group of seniors who had attended one of our initial meetings say that they wanted to have an indoor walking track because there was nowhere in their town for them to go in the winters when they wanted to get exercise. And they didn't do other types of fitness. They just wanted somewhere to walk. It's a very simple request. But when we were putting together the designs and the plans, we made sure that was one of the things that was at the forefront of it was we're making sure that these different user groups are all represented because at the end of the day, we can design whatever we want, right? But we're not going to be the ones who are using that space all the time. So it needs to be representative of the demographic that's actually going to be using it. So it's really satisfying to go back to a project years later and be able to see how it's being used, what they've changed since then. I'm sure like every project goes through things that they want to tweak and do differently afterwards, but just seeing them all enjoying the space and, things that they had pointed out that they wanted at the beginning of the process are actually being used then afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you didn't necessarily consider the work environment. I'm sure you recognized as soon as you began your education in those classes that maybe you were one of the few. And when we think about the audience members' question that was submitted, wanting advice and insights on how do you navigate some of these situations that she's encountered, have you encountered anything similar to what she's referenced since you've been in the field? And do you identify with what that reader was sharing?
For sure. Actually, when I saw uh, that question and the what the writer had sent in, I was like, I could have written this myself. It's very isolating, I guess I will say, because on one hand you have in architecture school right now, a lot of schools are looking at 50-50 for men and women. But then the further you get into your career, you get licensed, and only a quarter of all licensed architects are women. And out of that, the percentage that are women of color is even lower. And the average age for getting licensed is mid 30s. And I got licensed at 25. So there's a lot of isolation that comes, I feel like, the further you move along in your career. And I guess I've just noticed that, you see women starting out in architecture and in education, but then the further along you get, it kind of feels like there's diminishing uh, demographics in terms of the number of women who stay, whether that's to start families or to switch to a different career path or to whatever the reason may be. But the higher you get in leadership, the fewer women you start seeing in architecture.
So when you think about, some of the issues that this young woman encountered, the snide remarks about, and I went through the same thing. I got the job that I thought I would get, at 41, I got it at 31. And so I can remember walking into these spaces and I mean, I had to Google things just to even get some of the pop culture references because they were like two generations ahead of me, supervising people who were like my parents' ages, but maintaining respect for sure. But it was different, and it can be challenging when you are navigating that. When you are the only person or one of few, you don't have as many people to rely on. So I want, like, from your perspective, what are some of the issues that you think women worry about in the world of work, or perceived issues that people worry about compared to their male counterparts? And do you think generational differences exacerbates that?
For sure. I think to go back to the first part of your question, I mean, I've had clients ask questions about, how old are you? When did you graduate? Where are you from? Where are you really from? Um, should we wait for the architect to join the meeting? And it's like, spoiler alert, she's already here. Um, and so, unfortunately, yes, those comments are pretty relatable. I wish they weren't, but I also know I'm not the only person who's experienced those kinds of condescending comments. But one of the things that I think we're experiencing more of now, and while in some aspects it is a ideal time to be a woman because we have the opportunity to at least be working full time, I think uh, in previous generations it may have been more expected to, once you have a family, to be able to take time off work and then not return, or be able to take a larger gap of time off. And instead of picking one or the other, I've always been more of an and type of person where I'm like, I want to be able to still move ahead in leadership and, advance my career and like achieve all the things that I want to from an ambitious professional standpoint. But I also don't want that to come at the compromise of, starting a family and having a personal life and all of those things. So I think in terms of other generations, maybe the choice wasn't even there, but now that it is there, um, the perception of being able to balance those things and still having the best of both worlds is something that I think starting out or like being like midway through your career is something that I've seen as a little different.
Do you think that in your experience, our male counterparts are juggling those same types of thoughts and trying to navigate that in the way that we are as women?
I like your question. I like your question. Because I just, I wish, I feel like no. Um, because I've never heard anyone ask a male counterpart, "Oh, so how much time are you taking off after you have a child to come back to work?" Like I've full disclosure, I'm 6 months pregnant. So to have like the number of people I've had ask of like, "Oh, how much time are you taking off? Or when do you plan on returning to work? Are you returning to work? Do you plan on just staying at home after that?" And to me, that's not the route that I would choose at all. Staying at home is definitely for some people and they enjoy that lifestyle. I would not be able to do it for a day. So I don't think that I've ever heard a male be asked, like my husband has not been asked,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, when are you going to be like, or do you plan to be the stay at home dad?"
Right, right.
So, and I've had probably over a dozen people ask me that in the last few months. So it's just a very stark difference between what the expectations are of a woman when she's choosing her career over family or vice versa, compared to men are not being asked to make that choice.
Yeah, yeah. There's also,
Which is why I'm like, I want the and in between
right.
rather than the either or.
I can appreciate where you're coming from. First of all, I didn't know you're pregnant. Congratulations. I know I've seen you, but I didn't know. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited because I know we're working on some other things together over the next couple months. So I'm glad to be on this journey with you now. But um, I think the generational expectations around caregiving and even just multi-generational dynamics, whether it's caregiving for a kiddo or caregiving for a parent, there are some imbalances in terms of gender roles. But I also think in the world of work, things that I've seen play out, even when it's not related to parental leave. So people opting you out of things on, oh, well, she probably can't be a part of this committee, or maybe she wouldn't want to do it because I know she has to pick her kids up from school, or I know she's very involved in her kid. Like there are things that's like, I'm very much like you. Like I believe in and I can do those things at work and I can be a mom. But if you are in an environment where there are generational differences or even just gender differences, sometimes people will make choices for you about promotions, about access to career development opportunities. I can remember having a conversation with one of my bosses who was actually a female, and she wasn't going to send a particular one of my staff members, wasn't going to like refer them for this professional development conference because there was travel. And what about her kids? And I'm like, you don't get to make that decision for her. right? And so I do think there are ways that we as women, if we choose to opt out, that's one thing. But it's another thing when you're in a work environment when men or women are making those choices for you. And fortunately, in that particular situation, my staff member had me as an advocate, but there are things that we don't even hear about that we've been opted out of, just by the mere fact that people are making decisions for us about our gender roles and what their perceptions are. So I know that you've talked about some of the differences or perceived challenges that maybe you encounter. I know that our listeners, as well as that reader that wrote in, was very concerned about, how do you handle it? So as you think about how you're navigating challenging situations when you are the only female or the youngest person in the room or one of few, what are some of the ways that you navigate those challenges?
I think there's a few different things that I kind of snowball together. Um, to start with, I guess it makes me stand up taller and hold myself to a higher standard because I'm always thinking, if I make a mistake here, are they going to think women can't be architects? Are they going to think minorities aren't fit for this field? Are they going to think they need someone else who's older for this role? And so when you're the only in any of those situations, it's a lot of weight on your shoulders to feel like you're representing a whole group of people and not just yourself. But while that can feel like a burden sometimes, it's also, I guess, a source of pride for me in a weird way because it's like, yes, I want to succeed and I want to excel in this, not just for myself, but for the rest of that group, for the other women who are coming after me, or for the other people who are getting licensed younger. And so they can see themselves represented too. So one of it, I guess, one of the things that I would say is to use that to your advantage as a strength. And then also, I've found that it really helps to be involved in some sort of mentorship organization, whether that's being a mentor or a mentee. For example, in the Quad Cities, there's a great organization called Lead Her, for women that matches mentors and mentees together. I serve on their board of directors, but I'm also a mentor to two other great women. And realizing that you have experiences that can help other people when they have questions and come to you, and being able to share those experiences to help them level up in their careers is really rewarding. And it also helps you build up your own confidence too, because you realize, like, oh yeah, I do have things that other people can learn from and can contribute to their growth.
Yeah, I think some of the things that you reference about, finding mentorship, because you do need that. I feel like having somebody that you can lean on when those situations occur gives you the space to test out ways that you want to address it. I really like your comments around carrying a sense of pride around not only that identity, but not just treating it like a burden of having to represent this larger group of people, but like having a sense of pride in that you're paving the way. I can tell you things that I used to do. And, like the 30-year-old version of me is a little bit less refined compared to the 40-year-old version of me, but I'm very much about boundaries. And I think that respect is what this writer was getting at. And I think that that's a non-negotiable for me.
Mhm.
So some of the things that I would encourage people to do are very similar to what you've shared, but like in real time, I believe addressing those comments is important because it
Mhm.
sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. So things that I've done or encourage people to do might be humor. I feel like depending on what your relationship is and the rapport that you have with that person, if they're kind of razzing you about being young, you might throw back a okay boomer, that kind of thing. If it's appropriate. It may not be appropriate based on the dynamic, but also recognizing that throwing that humor back may open up the door for additional comments, right? So I think if you do decide to use humor in the moment to lighten it and to move things forward, I would also recommend calling that person in and saying, hey, we were kind of riffing today, but I do think it's really important that when we're in a working setting and we're working on a project, my age shouldn't be an issue, just as your age isn't an issue for me, right?
Mhm. And I've also had people where, like if you hear them make a comment and you're like, excuse
Uh
me, can you
huh.
say that again? they're like shocked to say it again because
The
they're
first
like, oh, I
time.
should not
Yeah.
have said it in the first place.
I also use this
Yeah.
strategy of just saying, ouch. Like that lets people know, like, hey, either that joke didn't land or it wasn't appropriate. And I can just simply say, oh, that was an ouch moment. And then I think it catches people from making those remarks. I think the last thing that maybe stands out to me as I think about the respect piece in particular is you have the ability to call people in and have very intimate conversations. You also have the ability to call out the behavior when it's happening. So, particularly if it's internal, I think things it's fair game to say, "Hey, I give you respect. This doesn't feel like respect is being returned. So can we not do that? Like moving forward, I'd like us to not really talk about age dynamics. It doesn't help the work that we're doing. It's not about our mission. We all have this shared vision. Just kind of getting people knowing what your expectations are. But expectations are what you want people to do. Boundaries is what you hold for yourself. And I think making sure you have firm boundaries is how you command respect.
I think it's important to differentiate between the two as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I wanted to just take a moment to think about, you reference mentorship. If you are in a male dominant space, what does it look or what is the value of having a male champion? Has that been something that has been part of your work environment? Is that something that you think is even necessary? What are your thoughts on male champions for women in roles where they're one of the only or one of few?
I mean, I think having a champion in general is incredibly important. For me, I can say having a male champion in my corner has been wonderful. The principal architect of our firm has been in my corner since day one, whether it was trying to get me hired as an intern or to start full time as a project manager, or whether it was as I was trying to get licensed. Um, Getting promoted to project architect and then senior architect, uh, he has been such a cheerleader for me that one of the biggest reasons why, like, in 7 years, I have not bothered to even think about applying to other firms because I love what I do so much and I love what the opportunities that I get here and the work environment that he's cultivated to be able to help me have those kind of opportunities. Um, I've had, meetings where clients will like ask questions to him, even though I'm the one who's done the design of the project, but they'll just defer to him because he's older, he's a man. And he'll redirect them and say, Saloni's the lead architect on this, ask her instead. Or if we have a council presentation, he's comfortable taking a step back and letting me run it because he trusts that I've got it handled. So having someone who advocates for you and values your work is so important. But especially when that person is able to, set the tone for other people to kind of learn from that behavior as well. So I think like the respect that he's shown me is uh, amplified when other people see how he treats me and treats other people in our firm too, because then that's the example that others learn from as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that example of like being able to model for the clients in particular, I think it can get a little sticky when you're trying to call out or even call someone in that's a client. But having someone who's in that executive role, male or female, that can really prop you up and amplify your voice is important. I want to just kind of round out things and really lean into what skills or tactics or approaches you're using to help navigate your growing and accelerating in your career. So as you think about how far you've come, and being in this senior architect role and being one of the few women, are you the only woman in your firm right now as an
Uh,
architect role?
there's one other who's also a senior architect.
Okay. So what are the approaches that you've used to navigate your career, grow in your career, but also earn the respect no matter what setting you're in?
So I think there's two parts to this, right? One is like the professional side of things, and then one is the personal. Uh, and neither of those really happened within the 8 to 5. For me, the one of the things that helped me excel the most professionally was being able to get licensed early on in our field, at least in architecture. One of the best ways that you can um, kind of propel yourself early on is to get licensed. which is, to be honest, not a very fun process unless you like studying and you're a nerd like me. So I enjoyed it, but most people don't. Because it's like either a 5 years bachelor's program and or a master's degree, and then 3,740 hours of work experience, and then 6 exams that are
Wow.
not a fun time. So it is a time commitment, but there's a difference between, saying, oh, I'll get licensed after like I have a few years of work experience under my belt, or I'll get licensed in like I'll start studying for it someday when I have time for it, and actually putting in the effort and time commitment to just get it over with. And at some point I just told myself, I'm never going to be less busy than I am now.
Exactly.
I might as well just jump in head first and just finish it. And it paid off because it helped me, level up, take more responsibility, advance further in my career, lead my own project teams. And the amount of time you spend outside of work developing yourself professionally is only going to help you and increase your own self-worth, which is what other people will be influenced by when they see how you carry yourself. The other piece of that is I mentioned personal development as well. And I think just getting involved in different community organizations, building your network, and leadership outside the office, whether that's volunteering, serving on committees, a passion project, serving on boards. You can never go wrong with expanding your connections in your network. And that's where sometimes you find advocates who are able to, be your cheerleaders or be your biggest supporters and be able to, say your name when you're not even in the room because they think you'd be a great fit for a particular opportunity. And so all of that, if you're able to take leadership outside the office, then it reflects on what you're bringing into the 8 to 5 as well. So I don't think any of us need to really be able to like advocate for ourselves by ourselves.
Right.
That there's a whole network of people we can rely on for that. And other people will be influenced by that as well, but it just takes a little bit of effort to put ourselves out there and develop personally to be able to form that kind of connection.
So it sounds like if I could put one word to what you've just described as intentionality, like
yes,
pouring into yourself professionally, but pouring into yourself in terms of personal aspirations and how you show up in your community to build your network.
Yeah, exactly. I think, there's like part of it is being able to support yourself in your professional goals, but when we're able to, we can't pour from an empty cup. So being able to give back to, whoever's in our network and try and bring it all full circle. So.
Awesome. Well, you are certainly paving the way for many women to follow. And so I'm so honored to have been able to share this space with you. I have no doubt that our listeners will be able to gain information and knowledge from your insights and the wisdom that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much, Saloni. I really appreciate you, and congratulations on the baby.
Thank you so much. Thank you, LaDrina. It was awesome being here, and I'm just really honored to be a part of this podcast, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course. Well, we've got a lot of amazing women across the state of Iowa. And as many of you know, Macey has been sharing those changemakers stories over the last couple of years. And she's going to continue to bring us their experiences and perspectives on our episodes here on the Fearless podcast. She's going to do that through our Fearless Focus segment. So Macey, I'll turn things over to you.
Yes, I am so excited to introduce Fearless Focus, which is our segment where we'll hear from change-making, trailblazing women who have shared their stories with us in our Fearless newsletter. Our guests will take a minute or so to share their perspective on a single question related to our episode topic. So I'm excited today. I have Perlla Deluca with me. Perlla is the owner and CEO of Southeast Constructors, founder of the Pink Hardhat Foundation, and co-founder of the Iowa School of Construction. Her company has completed 26 federal projects in the past 10 years, including the Women of Achievement Bridge in Des Moines and the restoration of former President Truman's home. She's a passionate advocate for women in construction and founded her all-inclusive construction school in 2021, in which half the students are women. And her foundation seeks to empower, educate, and inspire women in construction, covering the costs for mentoring and additional training for women in the construction industry. So, Perlla, I'm so excited to have you with me today. You shared with me recently that you've had many experiences of being the only, as not only just a woman in construction, but also a Latina immigrant woman. So I wanted to ask you, can you share with us how being the only in different rooms has kind of shaped your career? And how have you been able to navigate those moments?
Thank you so much, Macy. Thanks for having me. Such a great podcast, and I'm happy to be here. So to your question, yes, I've been in construction 28 years. So especially doing federal projects, I've been the only on the room many times with architects and engineers from national parks, Army Corps of Engineers projects. For me, like we talked on the past, it's always been it's challenging. Don't get me wrong, but are you gonna turn that challenge into an opportunity and do something with it? So I feel like, especially on the past 10 years, I decide that I'm gonna use that to focus more on advocacy and mentoring and having that opportunity to also show other women that even if you are the only one in the room and you still can make a change.
Yeah, I love that. You're talking with you before. It sounds like you're very focused on making sure that the women coming after you are not the only.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I'm big on that. That's the whole point of the foundation. I experienced firsthand how hard it is for women in construction, for example, which is my industry. And I want to make sure that we level the field and that those incidents stop happening. We should be able to work in any career we choose at this point and not have to deal with that on the process.
Beautiful. Lovely. Well, Perlla, thank you for sharing those insights with us. Listeners can learn more about Perlla by visiting www.fearlessbr.com and reading my feature story on Perlla's experiences building her construction company and school. And so with that, I will hand it back over to LaDrina.
I get so excited just hearing like that little snippet just got me so just energized thinking about all that is possible for women across our state and across our region. It's been an honor to feature the compelling stories and experiences of both Saloni Patel and Perlla Deluca. My greatest hope is that in sharing their stories, the listeners across our region can glean from their experiences to be able to better navigate how to command respect that they are due, and how to create workplaces where age, gender, and differences aren't a problem. Instead, they're attributes that make the workplace more dynamic and problem-solving more innovative. Thank you to all who have tuned in for today's episode. I have here with me Macey Shofroth, and I'm LaDrina Wilson. And remember, be bold, be brilliant, be fearless.